Well, here we are. It's Wednesday, October 5th, 2022. My name's Larissa, and we are going to continue reading, or actually start reading the text of the Consolation of Philosophy. A little bit of a tickle in my throat today, so I have my tea here. What is in this tea? This is a sun tea that I make. I make a big jug of it, and then I split it between 4 jars. So this is an anti-inflammation tea. This has grated turmeric, fresh turmeric root, and lots of ginger, fresh ginger root. And well, I bought it in bulk, and I grated it, and then I froze it in an ice cube tray. So when I make the tea, I can just throw the ice cubes into the big jug. And what else is in here? Goji berry, dry goji berry, hibiscus, mint, and burdock. I think that's what all is in here. So it's an anti-inflammation tea, and then the burdock root is to help flush stuff out, right, that causes the inflammation in the body. And I put it in a big jug. I sit it out in the sun for 24 to 48 hours, and then I strain it and put it into jars and put it in the refrigerator. And then I have a very refreshing anti-inflammatory tea. It's delicious too. So that's what I have here today. We start with book 1. The text of The Consolation of Philosophy by Boethius. And remember, I'm not reading the footnotes. That's something you would have to purchase the book on your own to do. And I do recommend it. The footnotes are very interesting. Book 1, Metrum 1. I once composed verses with joy, forced by grief. Melancholy measures I now collect. Torn muses bid me write. Elegies drench my face. Terror no more prevents these songs, my final companions, from brightening my path. Poems, once the glory of my green youth, console me now in old age's gloom. Old age came unsought, hastened by evil, commanded by pain. With hair whitened and skin trembling loose, my worn frame quakes. Death, sorrowful in sweet years, called in sadness is welcome. He shuns my wretched cries, refuses to close my weeping eyes. This dismal hour engulfing my head came while fortune favored me. She changed her cheating face. Now wicked days dragged forward endlessly. My friends, you boasted my happiness. How faltering was that life. Oh, a man now fallen. I, silent and alone, I was thinking about these things and began to record my tearful complaint, when it seemed to me that a woman appeared standing over my head. She had a holy book. And her eyes showed fire and pierced with more than human penetration. One could hardly guess her age. Her face was vital and glowing, yet she seemed too full of years to belong to this generation. Her height was hard to tell. At one moment it was that of an ordinary human, but at another she seemed to strike the clouds with the crown of her head. Indeed, when she lifted her head higher, she could no longer be seen by mortal eyes. Her clothes were made of the finest thread, skillfully woven and imperishable, woven by the woman herself, as I later learned from her. Yet a film grown dark with age, looking like soot covering a statue, obscured her dress. On its bottom hem was woven the Greek letter pi, with a series of steps ascending to a theta that rose above it. But this same garment had been ripped by the hands of some violent men who had torn away from it what bits and pieces they could. The lady held books in her right hand, and in her left, a scepter. As she caught sight of the muses of poetry standing by my bed, giving me words to suit my tearful mood, the lady was angry for a moment, and her eyes flashed with savage fire. She spoke. Who let these whorish stage girls come to see a sick man? It's more pain they bring than remedies. No, they make things worse with their sweet-tasting poison. These are the kind of women that choke off a mind's rich fruit, wrapping it up in sterile thorns of passion. They make a mind more used to disease instead of setting it free from pain. If you were trying to seduce a common man with your enticements, as you usually do, it wouldn't bother me so much. Then you would not be damaging my work, but a man weaned on elatic and academic philosophy? Now, go, you siren, sweet, until you bring destruction. Leave him to my muses to be cured and made whole. Chastised by her words, they lowered their heads in sadness, and by their blushes confessed the truth of her accusations. They withdrew from my room in sorrow, but my eyes were so bathed with tears that I could not recognize who this woman was that had shown such authority. I cast my gaze upon the ground and quietly waited to see what she would do next. Then she approached the edge of my cot and sat. Looking at my face, worn with grief and dejected with sorrow, she bitterly mourned my mind's confusion. Metron 2. The mind is blunted when worry grows, swollen by earthly winds, drowned in darkness, stretching into onward abyss. Its light is left behind. This man was once free to walk under open heavens, familiar with celestial courses. He viewed the sun's light, the icy moon, and wherever stars on wandering returns danced through changing circles, all these he possessed, mastered with numbers. He understood many causes of noisy gales disturbing the tide, what breath tumbles the earth, why the sun falls into the western sea to rise in the east, what regulates spring's hours that blossom the earth, and who made fertile autumn flow with full grape. He pried into hidden nature's secrets. This man now lies, his mind light forsaken, neck pressed with chains, face cast down, forced to discern nothing but the ground. 2. But now is the time for remedies instead of tears, she said. She then continued, looking straight into my eyes. Are you the one who was nursed on my milk and ate at my table until you gained manly strength of mind? Did I not give you all the weapons you needed, ones that would have kept your mind safe from harm? At least they would have if you hadn't thrown them away. Do you recognize me? Why don't you say any? Is it shame or confusion that leaves you silent? If only it were shame. But I can see it's confusion that overwhelms you. When she saw that I was not just silent, but totally speechless and completely unable to talk, she gently laid her hand upon my breast and spoke. There's no real danger here. He's simply dazed, as one would expect of a man suffering under delusion. He's forgotten who he is for a moment. He's easily remembered again soon. That is, if indeed he ever knew me. But first, we'll have to wipe away the cloud of mortal cares that darken his eyes. Saying this, she folded her gown, and with it wiped my tear-filled eyes. Metron 3. Then, with night's scattered shadows left me, and to my eyes returned their first strength, and when the violent west winds gathered stars, stormy rains persist in the sky. The sun lies hidden, no stars are yet in the heavens. Night is poured on the earth from above. If the north wind should flog this dark, this night released from the Thracian cave, its force would unbar the day once closed. The sun, now launched, shines with sudden light and strikes wondering eyes with its rays. 3. In just this way, the clouds of my sorrow were dispelled. Now my eyes dark in the bright light of heavens, and I could recognize the face of the one who was healing me. When I cast my eyes upon her and fixed my gaze, I saw it was the one whose home I had visited since my youth, the Lady Philosophy, my nurse. Why have you come down from on high to see me in the loneliness of my exile, O Lady of all virtues? Do you wish to stand on trial with me and face the charges they have falsely laid against me? Would I desert you, my child, she replied. Wouldn't I help you carry this burden of ours that has been laid upon your shoulders by those that hate me? It would not be right for philosophy to let an innocent man to walk his path alone, to think that I would be afraid to face an accusation or tremble in fear as if such charges were new to me. Do you think this is the first time that wicked men have made assaults against the walls of wisdom? She said. Didn't we often have to engage in battle against rash folly in the old days before the time of my Plato? And while Plato lived, didn't I stand beside his Socrates as he won victory by death, a death he did not deserve? And after that, the Epicurean and Stoic herds, and all the rest tried to snatch his legacy, every man for himself. They grabbed me too as their prey while I shouted and struggled against them, and they ripped this garment of mine which I had woven myself. As they went away with some little shreds torn from it, they thought that I had yielded myself completely to them. Since these men were seen with little bits of my clothing, they were foolishly assumed to be my friends. How many of them were destroyed by the errors of the crowd. But even if you don't know about the older examples, like Anaxagoras' flight, the poisoning of Socrates, or Zeno's tortures, surely you could have thought about men like Seneca, Canius, or Soranus. Such examples are hardly ancient or obscure. These men died simply because they were trained in my ways and had no taste for the pursuits of wicked men. So don't be surprised if we're tossed about by storms on the sea of life when we ourselves have chosen to be displeasing to the wicked. Indeed, we must despise their army, even if it is a large one, since no general directs it. Instead, it rushes about, carried here and there by a flood of error. If its army should set itself into ranks and attack us fiercely, we have a leader who will draw us into her fortress, while our enemies spend their time searching for their little bags of plunder. Yet we, untouched by their mad confusion, look down and laugh as they grab at every worthless thing they can find. Their cunning folly cannot climb the walls that keep us safe. Metrum 4. The virtuous man, calm in his orderly life, stares fortune in the face and drives proud fate beneath his feet. He holds high his unconquerable head. Nothing shall move that man, not the madness and menace of the sea disturbing the tide, nor Vesuvius's broken furnace hurling rock, nor the bolts of heaven's fire striking towers. Why do miserable men wonder at raging tyrants with no true strength? Fear not, hope not. This impotent wrath you will disarm. The anxious man dreads and desires. He cannot be firm under his own authority. He abandons his shield, his post, and fastens the chain by which he can be dragged. 4. Do you understand this? She said. Have my words sunk into your heart? Or are you simply like the ass that heareth the lyre? Why are you crying? Why cover your face with tears? Speak forth thy mind. As the poet says, you can't expect the benefits of treatment if you won't uncover your wound. So then I collected my strength of mind and replied, do I still need to explain my bitter sorrow? Isn't it clear enough how fortune has raged against me? Doesn't this very place cause you pain? Is this our library, a place that you yourself chose long ago as a sanctuary in our house, where you would safely teach me the wisdom of God and man alike? Was this the way I used to look? Was this the way I dressed when I was delving into nature's secrets, when you charted out for me the course of the stars, when you taught me how to live and what life meant by seeing the heavens as patterns of reality? Is this the reward I get for following you? Weren't you the one who hallowed the words of Plato when he claimed that the Republic would be blessed if lovers of wisdom ruled it, or if its rulers happened to love wisdom? You use the words of that very man to argue that this is why the wise must take part in public affairs, so the helm of state won't fall to wicked and criminal men who would bring ruin and destruction to the good. And so I followed this advice and chose to apply to public affairs what I had learned from you in our quiet hours together. You and the God who planted you inside the minds of good men can bear witness that I only took part in public life for the sake of benefiting all good men. But because of this motive, I have endured grim and irreconcilable quarrels from the wicked, and for the sake of keeping my conscience clean, I have preserved the law and never been afraid to offend the powerful. How often I stopped Conegastus and prevented him from robbing the wealth of every powerless man. How often I cast down Trigula, the prefect of the palace, when he had planned to harm someone. Indeed, even when he had already carried out his plans. How often I risked myself by using my authority to protect the unfortunate as they suffered countless attacks from the unchecked greed of the barbarians. I never strayed by choosing wrong over right. I grieved equally with the provincial families, and their estates were swallowed up by private greed and public taxation. When the famine occurred in Campania, and it seemed threatened with ruin by ridiculous taxation to provide for the army, I took my stand against the praetorian prefect. I favored the common good of the people, and I opposed him in front of the king. I won. When those ambitious palace dogs had nearly devoured the wealth of Polinius, a man of consular rank, I snatched him out of their gasping jaws. I endured the hatred of the informer Cyprian, who had tried to destroy Albinus, seeking to pronounce him guilty without a trial, though he, too, was a man of consular rank. Didn't I pile up quite enough ill will against myself? But surely other men should have kept me all the more safe, since my love of justice kept me from making any provisions for my safety by favoring the palace courtiers. And who are the informants that have caused my downfall? Basil, for one, a man dismissed from serving the king, who now is forced by his debts to lay a charge against me. Opilio and Gaudentius, both banished for countless cunning frauds, who then refused to go and instead took refuge in a sanctuary. When the king learned of their conduct, he decreed that they had to leave Ravenna by a certain day or else be branded on the forehead and driven out. What harsher condemnation could have been added to that? But on that very day, an accusation was made against me by these same men. Tell me, is that the reward I earned for my virtue? Did my prearranged conviction somehow make them just accusers? Shouldn't fortune have been ashamed, if not at the innocence of the accused, at least at the worthlessness of the accusers? Do you want to know the substance of the charge against me? That I wanted to preserve the Senate? In what way? I am charged with preventing an informer from introducing documents accusing the Senate of treason. So what do you think, my teacher? Shall I deny the charge so that I don't bring shame upon you? But I did want to keep the Senate safe, and I will never stop wanting to do so. Shall I confess then? There is no chance now to stop my accusers. Perhaps I should say that I was wrong in wanting to keep the Senate secure. Indeed, by passing decrees against me, the Senate did act disgracefully. Yet foolish self-deception never changes the true worth of anything. Agreeing with the advice of Socrates, I think it would have been wrong to hide the truth or give in to falsehood. But I will leave it to you and to the judgment of the wise to decide whether or not I have told the truth. To the pen and human memory I have entrusted the substance and account of this charge, so future generations will not be fooled. And what good does it do to speak of the forged letters that suggest I was hoping for Roman liberty? The lies of my accusers would have been obvious enough if I could have used their confessions. This always carries the most weight in such cases. But what freedom can be hoped for now? I only wish there were some. Then I would have used the words of Canius when Caligula accused him of complicity in a plot against him. If I had known of it, you would not have. In this situation, I am not made so dull by grief that I complain about wicked men contriving evil against virtue. What astounds me is that they have carried out their wishes. I suppose it is a common fault to lean towards evil, but it is almost monstrous that every wicked man accomplishes his plots against the innocent while God looks on. That's why one of your followers rightly wondered, if God exists, what is the source of evil? But what is the source of good if he does not? I can understand if wicked men who seek the blood of senators, and indeed of all good men, should wish to destroy me, too, since I am fighting for these very causes, but surely I didn't deserve this from the senators themselves. You remember, I'm sure, for yourself, were always right beside me, directing me what to do or say, what I did at Verona, when the king, in his eagerness for the ruin of the Senate, laid against it the same charge of treason that had been leveled against Albinus. Surely you recall how I defended them, all with no regard for my own security. You know that I'm saying these things strictly out of regard for the truth, that I never wanted to boast. For when a man displays his own good deeds and then reaps the reward of praise, he lessens in some way the satisfaction of a peaceful conscience by trying to justify himself. But you see what results my innocence has brought. Instead of receiving the rewards of true virtue, I suffer the penalty of a crime I didn't commit, even when a crime was openly confessed. Has there ever been a time when it was met by judges so severe that none were moved by an awareness of man's weakness or by tricks of fortune that affect everyone? If I were accused of wanting to set fire to a temple, of wickedly putting priests to the sword, of planning the slaughter of all good men, a sentence would be passed against me, but in my presence, after I had confessed or been found guilty. Now, 500 miles away, without defense or the opportunity to say a word, I am sentenced to death and condemned for favoring the Senate too much. How unworthily these senators have repaid my efforts. Little do they deserve that anyone should take such risks for them. The very ones who fabricated this charge know its value, an accusation they have further blackened by inventing the lie that I committed sacrilege in order to gain office. But you yourself, who are planted deep inside me, have driven from the depths of my heart any desire for transitory things, and under your gaze there could be no place for sacrilege, for you daily instilled in my ears and thoughts that Pythagorean precept, follow God. And it would not have been fitting for me to look for the aid of inferior spirits when you had endowed me with virtue in order to make me become like God, because besides this, the purity of my home, my companionship with honorable men, and my relationship with my father-in-law, a holy man as worthy of reverence as you yourself, should argue against any suspicion that I might have committed such a crime. It's unspeakable that these wicked men will gain credence for their charge because of my closeness to you. I will seem to be implicated in evil simply because I have been steeped in your teachings and governed by your ways. It's not enough that my reverence for you has provided me no help. You too have been ripped apart because I am assaulted. Indeed, what adds one more trouble to all the others is that most men look not at the merit of a charge, but rather at its outcome. They judge that a man has acted rightly only when things turn out well for him. And so, it always happens that the first thing an unfortunate man loses is his reputation. It causes me pain now to hear the rumors spread by people and to imagine how confused and contradicting their judgments are. I would say that this is the ultimate burden of misfortune. A wretched man is believed to deserve all that he suffers, even when the charge against him has been made up. Such is the case with me. Deprived of possessions, stripped of honors, and disgraced in the eyes of man, I have suffered punishment for doing good. I seem to see, on the other hand, workshops of unspeakable crimes, places where scoundrels happily wallow in their pleasure, each desperate man threatening others with fraudulent charges trumped up by informants, dashing to the ground good men, frightening them by our example. Each scoundrel boldly undertakes crimes with impunity, indeed is induced by rewards to accomplish them. The innocent, on the other hand, are deprived of their safety and defense, and so I cry. Metron 5. O builder of the star universe, sky spinner, star whirler, you are the commander. All obey your laws. The shining moon's crescent fills with her brother sun's flames, and together they conceal the lesser stars. With her crescent emptied, she loses her light. At night's beginning, Venus rises cold, the evening star, and as morning star, she pales with the rising sun. You shorten day's light, and winter comes. You quicken the night, and summer comes. The north wind whisks away what the west wind returns as ripe leaves. Sirius burns the crops, Arcturus guarded as seed. Your law binds all but man. How else could twisting fortune bring ruin? Crime squeezes the innocent, wicked men on earthly thrones. Let fools tread upon sacred necks. Virtue lies hidden in shadow, so the just man bears the crime. Fraud adorned in false colors brings no harm to the evil ones. Rejoicing in their power, they subdue the mighty at whim. O fastener of earth's bonds, look back on us. Men battered by fortune's seas are no worthless part of your effort. Ruler, check the fierce waves. Steady the earth, surround it with your law, which rules the vast sky. 5. When I had barked out these complaints in my unending grief, Lady Philosophy looked at me serenely, untroubled by my lament. When I saw you sad and full of tears, I knew at once that you were exiled and miserable. But had you not displayed it in your speech, I would not have known how far away your banishment had taken you. Indeed, how far from your native land you are, and yet you haven't been expelled. You simply strayed away. If you prefer to think of yourself as banished, then you should realize you've banished yourself. For in your case, such a banishment is something only you could do, not someone else. If you would just remember what country you are from, not one ruled like Athens by the power of the many, but one in which there is one ruler and one king. He is the one who delights in the company of his subjects, not in their expulsion. To be led by his reins and yield to his justice is perfect liberty. Or don't you know the most ancient of the laws of that city, the one that prevents the exile of anyone who chooses to establish his home there? No man walled in by its fortress needs to fear that he will ever suffer exile, but anyone who no longer wishes to live there by his own choice ceases to deserve the right to do so. And so, it's not so much the appearance of this place that saddens me, but the vision of you yourself. I don't miss the walls of your library, decorated with their glass and ivory, so much as I miss my seat of honor in your mind, where I gathered together not books, but the things that give books their value. Now, you have rightfully said much about the deeds you have done for the common good. You could have mentioned many more. Regarding the truthfulness of the charges against you, or rather the obvious falseness of them, you have given good account. Regarding the crimes and deceit of your accusers, you have rightly spoken little, since the common crowd recognizes them well and makes them more widely known than you could. Indeed, you have soundly railed against the unjust acts of the Senate regarding the charge leveled against us. You have grieved and wept as you saw the assaults made to our reputation. Finally, your anger has grown hot as your bad fortune and you have complained of rewards unequal to your merit. As you put an end to your raging muse, you pleaded that the same peace that rules the heavens would also rule the earth. But since such a storm of passions has come upon you, and you are pulled about by conflicting feelings of pain, anger, and sorrow, you can't, in such a mind, be given stronger remedies. And so I'll apply gentler ones for now, so that your wound, which has hardened and grown scarred by the constant pricks of your anxieties, may grow softer with gentle treatment and become ready to receive a more effective cure. Metron 6. When summer sky rages heavy with beams of sun, man who plants seeds then finds furrows refusing. Foiled, he must seek food beneath oaks. Never would you hunt groves for violets when fields have bristled and creaked with the north wind, nor would you prune spring branches if you wish the grape, for these are autumn bestowed. God gives the times their tasks. These determined duties cannot be mixed. Whatever abandons this order takes a dangerous journey with no good end. 6. Now then, she said, will you let me begin by asking a few questions to examine your state of mind, so I can see what cure is best for you? Ask, and I will certainly answer whatever you think is fitting, I said. Do you suppose that this is a world ruled by random chance events, or do you believe some reason guides it? I could never think that such an ordered world is ruled by random accident, I replied. I know quite well that God presides over the work he has created, and there will never come a time when I will abandon the truth of this assertion. Indeed, this is the very thing you proclaimed in verse a moment ago when you lamented that men only were separated from the care of God. But concerning other things, you have no doubt that reason provided energy and guidance. How strange. I really don't understand why you are sick when you have so healthy an opinion. But let us dig into this more deeply. There must be something missing. Now tell me, since you have no doubt that the world is governed by God, do you perceive what rudders are used to steer its course? I can hardly understand what you are saying, much less answer your question, I replied. Wasn't I right to say that something was missing, that some sickness had created this unrest slipping into your mind as if it were passing through a crack in a wall? But tell me, do you remember the end of all things, or the goal to which all nature strives? I've heard it, I said, but sorrow has dulled my memory. Surely you know where all things have their origin. I know, I said, and told her it was God. Then how can it be that you know the beginning of all things, but are ignorant of their end? Indeed, this is the nature of anxiety. It has the strength to make a man lose his footing, yet it can't overthrow him completely. Now, I would like to ask you this too. Do you remember that you are a man? Remember it? Of course. Can you tell me then what a man is? Are you asking if I know that I am a rational and mortal creature? I know it, and I confess it. She then replied, Is there nothing more that you can add? Nothing. Now I know the other, in fact, the greatest cause of your disease. You no longer know what you are. Now I understand why you're sick and how I can find a remedy to restore your health. Since you're overwhelmed by forgetfulness of your nature, you grieve at being an exile and deprived of your goods. Indeed, since you are not aware of the end of all things, you think that base and wicked men are powerful and happy. And since you have forgotten with what rudders the world is steered, you think the earth is tossed about by chance without a pilot. These things are great enough to cause not just illness, but even death. Yet I give thanks to the author of health that your true nature has not totally abandoned you. We have the best tinder for rekindling your health, a true opinion concerning the governance of the universe, a governance you believe to be dependent on the divine reason rather than the whims of chance. Have no fear at all then. Soon you will see this little spark give off light and life-giving warmth. But since it is not yet time for stronger remedies, and since it is the nature of the mind to put on false opinions when it has cast aside true ones, I will try to clear the mist a little with mild and gentle remedies. This way, you will be able to recognize the brightness of the true light as the shadows of deceptive desires have been pushed aside. Metrum 7. Stars, cloud concealed, shed no light. If the south wind tangles the tide of a rolling sea, water once day clear, now muddied, obscures sight. Every stream, wandering a mountain down, can be stopped by rocks, and you, to discern truth with a clear light, to seize the straight path, banish joy, banish hope, banish fear, put them to flight. The mind is shackled when these rule. Lady Philosophy. Whew. Hot mama. I hope you enjoyed book 1. See you for book 2.